A mother with her children?
No. Al, I just saw Elvis.
They dug it up, removed it from rotation, and pretended it never happened. One Married with Children episode pushed against a line so harsh that Fox shelved it for years. And now it's finally about to be released. What made one half hour so volatile that it threatened sponsors and kept a new network on its toes? This lost episode didn't disappear. Someone ensured that it remained buried. We'll track the moment Married with Children broke the formula, the episode that triggered alarms, how it quietly aired once, why it returns now, and why it still hits hard today. Rule Breaker TV arrives. Before this show, Primetime Family smiled, learned a lesson, and hugged it out before the credits. Then Fox put a different family on the screen, and the spell broke. Married with Children did not attempt to be nice or comforting. It strode in with a sigh, a scowl, and a joke. Al Bundy peddled shoes he despised to individuals he disliked. Peg Bundy adored the couch and remote more than housework or cooking. Kelly and Bud pursued attention and low-hanging fruit. It was not a cozy living room where all issues were resolved by minute 21. It was a space where there was never enough money, where tempers ran long, and the only reason the day moved was because of a joke that hurt just enough to elicit laughter. The audience heard it loud and clear. This was not a show that would find life to be tidy. That initial reaction became a calling card. The authors eliminated the mellow music and a neat wrap-up. They did not lecture. They did not pause to tell everyone what they were supposed to feel or do next. They allowed mean thoughts to fall into punchlines. They allowed pride and regret to rest side by side. They employed silence like a setup and the camera like a smirk. The vow was straightforward. If a joke is true, it find a home. That truth attracted an audience. Folks who were excluded by slick sitcoms saw themselves reflected here. The show declared that work could reduce you to nothing, that marriage could stall, that bills arrive when hope does not. It challenged viewers to laugh at the chaos, and laughter felt liberating. There was no lesson at last, just the beat of insults and loss. And somehow that seemed nearer to the truth than words spoken over a soft piano. After the voice were opposing views. Barren, raw, and haphazard were some of the criticisms. Community groups wrote letters. Politicians raised eyebrows. Censors underlined words, sliced riffs, and snipped scenes. Everyone here came to learn to read the air. Some types of jokes had to be edited to be broadcast. Some scenes had to be handled delicately to be broadcast. But the show never lost its edge week to week. It zeroed in on its host, its neighborhood, its children, and its environs. It broadened the discomfort so the laughter would bear the entire brunt. That was what made it fair. The authors didn't choose one thing and hammer it into flatness. They made the whole map a target and then ensured that they struck themselves as well. That way, the show could blurt out the unseemly truths with no threat of sounding preachy. That kind of balance, actual tough truths, equally targeted, smoothly delivered, was the secret to being able to tiptoe along the thin line between shock and acuity. Another line of actors lived under the floorboards, undeniable to all but anonymous to anyone. Puns were permissible. Cheapest boasts? Fine. Wisecracks about money, pride, or age were permissible too. The show might go after love and marriage, as long as the biggest remained cartoon. But when a story concept crept past the limits of shame and fear, a fidgety silence crept around. This silence was qualitatively different. It was not taste, it was risk. It was not, "Is that mean?" but "Is that too real?" Dirty joke about a crappy job? Super loud and safe. Dirty joke about being out of control? All nerve endings are over here, on this side of the set. Nerves that get referenced to headlines. Headlines that then reference meetings. Meetings result in hollow ad slots. To a nascent network attempting to get moving, that isn't humor, it's dangerous. This was exactly the ground Married with Children had excelled at working around. It could destroy the rules, but someone had to be the first toe planted on them. It could be at the altar of mockery of itself, but not with some charge that looked toward real, flesh-and-blood individuals nursing genuine wounds. That unwritten dictum influenced drafts, rehearsals, and last-minute cuts. Most of the time, it worked. The show would play some welly into pushing the envelope, creating the laugh, and getting off scot-free. But there was one week when the writers crossed into turf that tested that moral boundary. Farce or not, it contained the good stuff. The punches, the jabs, all of what was a Married with Children hallmark. But beneath it struck the nerve everyone had agreed not to touch. And this was not just another hot half hour. It was a turning point for a network desiring to be edgy without tumbling into insolvency. The writers believed they created one more shocking Bundy caper. The suits perceived something else altogether. I'll See You in Court. The premise resembled any other Bundy fiasco. Al and Peg, mired in the routine of a dead marriage, planned to inject some excitement into their lives with a night out of the house. Their scheme is not so much romantic as it is desperate. They rent a low-budget roadside motel room, the sort of establishment that comes across more as a setup than an escape. For the Bundys, that's the gag. Intimacy packaged with dysfunction. But in the walls of that motel lies one of the show's own surprises that even they couldn't turn into a joke. Behind their backs, cameras roll. Their evening of passion is documented, indexed, and eventually found by outsiders. When Al and Peg learn about it, the tone changes. The laugh track continues to roll, but the audience now feels something different, discomfort. Relative to the rest, the script took the formulaic course of the show. Humiliation, awkward romance, dirty jokes, courthouse anarchy. Check, check. But this tale cut deeper than most. It transcended a simple slapstick routine of AL's frustration or Peg's closet of shopping mall ennui that undefined. It played with something intimate, something delicate. The peculiarity of Bundy's shame somehow functioned as a portal into a collective paranoia of millions. The loss of agency over the most private moments of one's existence. The idea of being recorded against one's will was barely broached on television in 1989 before the age of social media and online leaks. For Fox executives, that silence was not by chance. It was a dam no one would brave crossing. Married with Children had now finally ventured into a realm network comedy had no guide to navigate. Scenes inside courts just thinned out. The couple's lawsuit against the motel was replete with innuendo, much testimony, and humor that teased on the line between absurdity and embarrassment. The chuckles were there, though wincing, seeing the Bundys struggle to regain their dignity in the jeering laughter of a mock trial too close to real life. Bearing the hapless victims, small covered in punchlines. And now, for the faithful, the biting edge is in the appeal. It's tough enough to hurt, humorous enough to laugh about, and outlandish enough to recall. That was what it was, the ideal nightmare for advertisers and executives. A joke that's too real, too raw, and too close to actual fears about exposure and consent. It would have altered the melody from yet another foul half hour to red flag waving, I'll See You in Court. The type of subject matter, not obscene in the traditional sense, did not demonstrate or lend itself to indecency. What it did do was worse. It blew against shame, violation, in those areas which no advertiser ever wanted to be identified with closely. While Fox was yet to prove it could hold water with the big three networks, this wasn't a risk worth taking. The show was filmed, edited, and in line for broadcast. But once it landed in the hands of executives, the axe came quickly. This one wasn't leaving the air. The silence made the decision all the more horrific. No statement in the press, no grand debate, just a quiet funeral. For the cast, it was business as usual in the life of shooting. For the crew, it was another wrap. For the fans, it became a rumor, a ghost episode talked about but never disclosed. The Bundys had always existed in a world of shame. This time, the humiliation was not theirs but Fox's. And to save its back, the tried and tested network closed the door. The show scared them off, but a cultural lightning bolt converted the scare to a shutdown. Boycott, backlash, and sponsors the Bundys were already on the critics' radar, but the fate of the episode was sealed when public outrage struck the network where it was most painful, its bank account. In 1989, one viewer, Terry Ricalta, chanced upon an episode of Married with Children that offended her. It wasn't I'll See You in Court. It was another raunchy episode with innuendo and snide comment. But to Ricalta, a Michigan mother of 4, it was more than a crass sitcom. It was a cultural threat. She mounted a campaign against the show, writing advertisers and calling on them to pull their advertising money out of Fox until the network cleaned up its programming. The sponsors proved, to most observers, breathtakingly sensitive. Big names such as Coca-Cola and Kellogg's pulled ads as unwilling to have their brands linked to something that was being irately referred to as trash TV in the dailies. By contrast, press coverage in Recalta's defense rallied. She was praised by conservative commentators, and detractors of her action fueled the flames. Suddenly, Married with Children had become the battleground of a culture war over what television should and should not be allowed to depict. This was a nightmare for Fox. The network had established its reputation on edginess and defying convention, but it was still learning its lessons. Its entire plan hung in the balance without the confidence of its advertisers. So cleverly, I'll See You in a Court did ultimately become toxic and not simply another gritty episode. For it wasn't simply a gritty episode. It was something very close to a lawsuit to be filed, a headline to be served, and a sponsorship boycott to be reignited. The story centered on voyeurism, hidden cameras, and consent. What had made those who worked in corporate halls feel queasy long before there was a boycott. Now, where public pressure was building, to broadcast this show was not only risky, but reckless. It was the perfect storm. Inside the studio, there was legal nervousness, and outside it, there was moral outrage. Thus, Fox only had one choice: to bury the episode quietly and pray that fans would forget it happened. The irony was savage. The show broadcast jokes on necrophilia, lewd remarks about women, and whole episodes based on the theme of objectifying Kelly Bundy. Yet those episodes stayed on the air. What did I'll See You in Court in for was not the obscenity, it was timing. On the heels of Recalta's boycott, anything that touched on genuine world concerns regarding privacy and exploitation was too hot to touch. Advertisers didn't want their logos beside courtroom humor regarding illegal videotaping. Network executives couldn't afford to look the press in the eye and define how a brand new network was making voyeurism mainstream. The episode wasn't canceled for being too dirty. It was canceled for being too real. It was unseen by general observers. It just went off the schedule. There was never a press release. It was taken out of TV guides. It was not included in the home video releases. It was for a few years only in rumors and speculation. The fans debated whether it had even been produced or if it had been lost prior to broadcasting. Reality was somewhat less salacious and considerably more infuriating. They had the show in the can, locked away, and unreleased because the wrong individuals at the wrong moment felt it was better just to bury that episode than risk its possibly coming back to haunt them. If the network buried it, did the individuals who created it concur with the funeral? Behind the set shock for the producers of Married with Children, I'll See You in Court was not a grenade. It was business as usual. The cast showed up on set, read the script, and ran lines with the same pacing and cadence they had developed over 3 seasons. The cast set fire to the sleazy motel set, rolled cameras on the courthouse pranks, and wrapped up production as if they'd done it all 20 times before. No one believed that this episode would be different. It was gross, yes. It was humiliating, absolutely. But that was the Bundys. Uncomfortable closeness, humiliating situations, and ridiculous courtroom fights. That was their game. The notion that this one would be put on hold never entered anyone's head. Ed O'Neill, following his character of Al Bundy,